Go ahead and start this next session. It's on landfill gas
sir, how are you?
utilization.
Welcome to the meeting.
And there are some people that are out of the room. Hopefully they will be coming back shortly.
Okay, we'll get started. I'm Mark Spafford.
Barbara, we're starting this meeting, ladies and gentlemen.
Is the recorder on?
Yes, it's on.
Okay, so introducing myself, I'm Mark Spafford. I'm the General Manager of the Department of Solid Waste Services. To my left, I have Mark Madden, who is our Manager of Engineering and Planning. And we're going to talk today about some of the ongoing projects and discussions we're having regarding landfill gas at the Anchorage Regional Landfill.
Let's go ahead. Let's have the assembly members identify themselves.
Yeah,
Sorry.
well, go ahead and finish your statement. Then what I would do is just introduce everybody, make sure.
And so I would like to, again, just continue on Mark Madden. Mark Madden was here at the inception of the landfill gas project, and so he is our subject matter expert as far as the department is concerned on landfill gas. He's also, works very closely with my counterpart at Williams Utilities, Mr. Dan Gavora, who is the operator of the landfill gas to energy plant. So what I would like is to have them come up here, present on the work that the history of the landfill gas project, as well as the ongoing work that we've been doing, not only with Doyon to try to expand the plant, but also with some other engineering projects that we have going on. So that's my opening.
Great. Introduction.
Sure, Felix Rivera.
Dick Trainey, and I think we've got Amy and Dabowski online.
Okay.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Eric, are you still online, sir?
Still online, yes.
Okay. Forrest?
Forrest Dunbar.
Jim Seal.
Suzanne France.
John Weddleton.
And our presenters, all three of you. One for the
Dan
record.
Gavora, President of Doyon Utilities.
And Mark Spafford, General Manager, Department of Solid Waste Services.
Mark Madden, the Manager of Engineering and Planning for Solid Waste Services.
Go for it. You're good.
Hit it?
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, so, real quickly, I consider Mr. Trainey was probably the only one here when we started this project.
I was here.
And you were here.
Sorry.
You're on the Simpsons.
Actually, I was living here, yes.
So, I'm trying to go through these earlier slides fairly quickly, but what I have behind me is basically just kind of a historic perspective, key dates and times in the landfill gas from before we started to when we actually closed, and actually the end of Dan's contract, which is actually could actually be later than our proposed close of the landfill. I hate to say that I was here at the beginning of that list, and I'm not going to be here at the end.
One never knows.
No, I won't. So one of the things that got us here is in about 2006 we started actively collecting landfill gas, and we waited a couple years to make sure we had a good feel for how much gas we had, and we had a couple of different proposals, but in 2010 at the direction of the Assembly we put out a solicitation for a contractor to or vendor to take over and do a beneficial use project for the landfill gas. And one of the things that we made sure when we started out was that the solicitation was open to any and all technologies that might be out there. What we did, as you can see, is we wanted to make sure that what we were getting was a good quality, dependable and reliable operator because obviously when you start getting into the scope of a project of this magnitude, the amount of investment, and I'm sure Dan will agree with me on this, we had to make it long enough term that they could get reasonable payback on their investment. I think you got, what, 30, the investment was about $32 or $33 million to build it. So we wanted to look for a company that had, good experience, good financial strength, but also how much money was coming back to the municipality from the project as a whole. We did end up getting five proposals. Dan's was one of the three that produced electric power. We did have a couple of others. One wanted to just produce high quality, high BTU gas, and combined heat and power was another one. And they all fell out for various reasons, but probably the most attractive thing from Doyan's from this analysis that Doyan came out is that because they weren't producing power and then selling it to somebody else, they were the actual user, they being Doyan in their contract with the base. They were in a position to pay us much more for the gas than any of their competitors. So just to give you an idea of how that falls out, right now there's like 637 active projects going on using landfill gas in the United States, and the big thing is that over 80% of them are producing electricity. It's real common. It's not to say it's not the only way to go, but it's a real common type of project. So the next question comes up is, well, how much landfill gas is really out there? And that's not such a hard question, because the amount of gas that you get back is directly related to the amount of organic material you put in. But the big challenge is how fast you can get it out of the landfill. What rate is it going to come to you at? And we've modeled it numerous times using some of the brightest minds in the landfill gas industry. Our first shot was this blue curve that's at the bottom. We did that in 2004 before we had actually actively started pulling any gas out of the landfill. And that was also what was used as the basis for the solicitation process. The contractors were required to produce a project that could use a minimum of 80% of that dark blue line curve there. Once we got to the point where we were starting to design the project with Doyan, I believe you guys actually had commissioned that one. This pink line is, we took the original model and had it calibrated so that the initial years matched what we were actually pulling out of the landfill. The red dots are our actual production annually. And so we tweaked it up, and obviously it showed that we could actually get more out of the landfill than we thought originally. And as you can see in the red dots there, we've actually been pretty much above that curve. And so what the brown curve is kind of the pie in the sky, absolute blue sky, everything perfect situation that we're pretty sure we'll never get to that point, but that's the upper bound of anything we would ever consider designing for. So just to give you a quick rundown on the Doyan project itself, this is an overview of the landfill. The original collection area is that area in blue, and it's probably, we've expanded a little bit since I put this picture together, but for the most part that's where we do it. It comes out of about 88 acres of the landfill right now. Originally we just had one little building with a flare and we burned everything. When the Doyan project came together, they built this little green box up here at the very top, which is the gas processing building, and it's basically right next to our original building, just to take advantage of the way the piping was laid out in the landfill. And then there's a pipeline that goes from that processing building all the way down to the power plant down here at in the lower left-hand corner of the building, or of the picture. And the power plant is actually on Fort Richardson and not on municipal property. So, and that was partly because the DOD energy requirements. There was a federal law that was passed that required DOD installations to use green energy, renewable energy, and the advantage of putting it there was that Fort Richardson got double credit if the project was actually built on the base. So it was an advantage to both sides to put it there. This is just a kind of a real quick rundown of some of the key points in the contract with Doyon. As you can see, it was a design, build, operate, 20 years and plus 2 renewal options, which gets us the original first year of the contract was 2013. Our gas price is based on the price that Chugach Electric pays for gas at their power plants in the Cook Inlet region. There's a formula because we use an average over a 12-month period. Going back to that picture, everything that was in green is on municipal property and is owned by the municipality but operated by Doyon. And the power plant on the other side, and a short stretch of the pipeline that's on the other side of the property line are owned by Doyon. Is it owned by Doyon or owned by the? Yeah. So, and as I say, the way it operates is that to operate all that equipment that's on our side of the property, we pay Doyon a percentage of the gas price. Probably the only 2 other things I would like to throw out about the project itself right now is that right now we have an installed capacity on site of 7 megawatts, and I always like to throw in, we did get a nice award from the Solid Waste Association of North America as one of the top projects in 2013. So, probably what got us to this meeting here is the discussion of, well, how much gas does Doyon use out of all of the gas? Because we're always continuously flaring some gas on the side. We have to do that because we have to pull a certain amount of gas out of the landfill to make sure that we don't have emissions, surface emissions. If we don't pull hard enough on the landfill, the gas will kind of seep out. And occasionally, we'll have issues where you can smell it when you're driving down the highway, and I'm sure 1 or 2 of our friends up that direction have run into it occasionally. But one of the things that happens is that we'll never get to a point where a project will use 100% of the gas, because the amount of gas that's being produced at any given time is kind of variable on even things like the barometric pressure changing that day. So there are small fluctuations plus maintenance requirements and things like that. So what we have here is kind of a picture of how much that we flare and how much we sell to Doyon. One of the challenges that we have in being able to sell all of it is that all of the electricity that's produced by the Doyon project can only be used on the Fort Richardson side of J-Bear, because when they created the 2 bases back in the day, they each have their own separate central substation, and they aren't connected. There's no interconnection between the grid on Fort Richardson and the grid on Elmendorf. So right now, we put all of our, Dan puts all of his power into the Fort Richardson grid, and that's all we can do. And as I say, we have 7 megawatts of power, or 7 megawatts of power capacity. When you get to the summertime of Fort Richardson, evenings, weekends, the demand drops to like 5 megawatts. So we produce more power than they can use. So literally the operator turns one generator off every night when he goes home. Yes, sir.
Yeah, do you want questions in a minute? You want to?
Whatever works for you guys.
Yeah, well, Dick also was in the queue. Dick, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. J-Bear is now unified, has been for 10 years. So how do we get this changed? Because when you look at both sides of that pie, the Elmendorf side is going to increase power usage. The Fort Rich side's not. How do we make that power switch to the Elmendorf side of this? Because, for example, I see all that gas we're flaring off. If we could bring Elmendorf online, that could even necessitate getting another generator there because I get complaints all the time from people. You're gonna hear from Amy. Should the methane going past there is gagging. So how do we get this done?
Great segue to the next slide.
All right.
Okay.
Let Forrest answer.
Sorry.
See if he's got.
Well, this might be addressed on the next slide too, but are we contractually obligated, or is going on to sell to Fort Rich or just to Fort Rich, or is it a technical engineering challenge? If we could we sell into the Chugach grid, for example, or the MEA grid, or directly to Elmendorf?
So Doyon has a contract with the Army. And when we originally won those awards, they were not joint based. So we won the contracts for all of Army Alaska. So we do Fort Wainwright, we do Fort Greeley, and we did Fort Richardson. When they joint based Elmendorf and Richardson, we still only operate and own the utilities on Fort Richardson. And Mark's correct, is those utilities do not connect. They can be easily connected, but they haven't been connected. And we don't have any rights or responsibilities for the Elmendorf side of the installation. The installation is being managed now by the Air Force combined. Our contract has now been moved to the Air Force, so now we are kind of more integrated with the Air Force. But there was in the past, and this, so obviously those installations have a relationship with MLMP. Prior to us, all their power requirement was coming from MLMP independently, one to Fort Richardson, one to Elmendorf. There was the base Fort Richardson has been working with MLMP on trying to use MLMP's system to basically join the two together. The prior MLMP administration was not receptive to that. So we embarked upon a process to create a transmission linkage between the two installations. Matter of fact, we have about a $4 or $5 million project to do that, which spent about $3 million. And now MLMP has changed because quite honestly, there's a bus bar which has Elmendorf on one side and Fort Richardson on the other. Literally, you could connect them basically with an agreement. And so we're in the process right now working with MLMP on an agreement to connect both of those, which we hope to have done by this summer. And the summertime is, and so Mark mentioned the fact that we have more load than we have demand in the summer. So we do basically take engines offline because MLMP will not allow us to push power back onto the grid. We don't have that kind of relationship with MLMP. So therefore, we basically derate ourselves in the summer. So right now we're fine because everything we can generate is being used. So we intend to have a contract in place with MLMP. It's between us, MLMP, and the Air Force to be able to use that bus bar to interconnect the two sides of the installation. So the project that we were designing actually a transmission feeder to do this, which we're going to do it basically with an agreement. So that should be done by, we're hoping, June.
We have an item on our agenda to consider the sale of MLMP to Chugach Electric. Has there been any discussion with Chugach Electric with regards to?
No, because these
possibility?
discussions were taking place prior to that announcement, so there's been no consideration of a change to Chugach.
But you have had the discussions with Mark Jonathan? MLMP?
Did you, the current
yes.
manager?
Yeah, Mark and I think Anna is his regulatory lady.
Okay. Mr. Costa?
Yeah, this is a rudimentary question, actually. So the smell has been an issue that I've noticed increasing recently in the last month or two. And is the smell generated from the flaring or from the gas that escaped unburned?
It is mostly from when we're not able to, when we hit points where we're not able to pull gas out fast enough and use it fast enough. One of the things that we're working with Dan's group on is trying to better coordinate how the gas is being used. So, for example, if they take a couple of engines offline on a weekend when we're not there to increase the flow out of the to the flare, the amount of gas that's being drawn out of the landfill goes down. And as I say, we need to pull a certain quantity out a almost consistently to be able to keep enough vacuum so that everything stays in the landfill.
Otherwise it vents.
Otherwise it vents, exactly. So where we are right now is doing several things. Number one, it's a fairly simple fix that we're kind of working through to automate a few things just to take care of that issue. Dan already threw me a curve here because I was still thinking you were building a power line, and that's what I put on my slide here.
Well, and I apologize about that, but because that's been back and forth, right? So that was literally just a change in approach from MLMP that allowed us to do that. Because until a month ago, that's what we were doing.
Okay.
The other question I had is with regards to the flare amount. And I know you don't have room in the powerhouse for another generator. Even a small one that you could pick up some of the.
We have room.
Let's talk about that.
They have room.
We have
Let's
room
talk
for
about
one
that.
more unit.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Right now, Dan and his group have a couple of what they call business cases they've been pushing forward, and I'm going to let you talk about it quite a bit, but just to throw it out, they have a range of projects. Right now, the powerhouse looks like this guy right right here, where it was originally designed to have 6 units in.
Mhm.
Right now there are 5, the blue boxes. There's a potential to put in one more box there. Each one of those, by the way, those 1.4 megawatt generators run about 400 CFM gas. So about 600,000 cubic feet of gas every day, which is a big difference. A couple of different options that are the kind of the range of options are everything from just finishing out the original design on the original plant to possibly building a second plant next door with almost doubling that capacity. And I'm going to let you talk about that process.
They got a question real quick.
Just want to understand then, you've got to get there's a bus bar put into effect so you can have the demand for electricity. Because right now in the summertime, Fort demand goes down, so you're not pulling as much gas. So how soon will you have this ability to transfer electricity to the Elmendorf side so this won't happen again?
Yeah. Well, like I said, the infrastructure to do it is in place now.
Okay.
The agreement to do it is not. And that agreement takes a coordination between MLMP, because MLMP has contracts with both Elmendorf and Fort Richardson. Those contracts have to be opened up. They've got the relationship with me. They have to bring me into the fold, and then we have to do some SCADA connection work and things like that, so that we've got MLMP has controls and has switches and things like that. So, but it's relatively much easier than what we embarked upon, which is a feeder construction and substation work that we were envisioning before. But this bus bar has been there. It was just an agreement issue.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet. Go ahead.
Okay, so Mark kind of laid out the fact, kind of the history of how we got here. The reason that plant was built was 6 bays for generation was because the initial gas projections off the landfill that's about what we would get over the course of 20 years. That's about 8 megawatts of power out of that gas. So we ended up barely getting the first 3. Originally, we thought in the first 5 years, three engines would do it. We got the 3 engines, or actually 4 engines. We had the 4 engines just brought online and decided, and all of a sudden we knew we had enough for 5. We also took advantage during this period of time of the investment tax credits that's during the Obama administration. And so we wanted to access those credits, so we ordered the 5th unit up real quick. So we went to 5 units when we thought we were going to be barely have enough gas for 4. And so now with the updates on the gas production, we see that there's significant more generation. So we've gone back to the Army. This is a good project for the Army. The Army it's got economics. It's got definitely their security, energy security. The fact that this generation unit exists on their installation is a big deal for them. And they also got their green credits associated with this project. Matter of fact, they got credits for their whole Pacific division. They fulfilled their credit requirements out of this project. So it was a very good project. So we've gone back and expressed to them there is more gas available. We're motivated as a utility to access that gas. I know you're motivated to sell the gas. But there's a process that we have to go through with the Air Force now, and that was a major deal there, is that privatized utilities are somewhat rare in the Air Force. So as we transitioned from Army to Air Force, there's a period of time when the Air Force is getting used to who we are and what we do. Normally Air Force installations don't have privatized utilities, we are. So there's been that challenge in how we do capital work and how that blends into the Air Force funding streams. So we've done a business case where we looked at the available gas that now that you're projecting for the next 15, 20 years, looking at our infrastructure, and so first of all, until we get that additional load, nothing makes sense, right? So we think that we'll have that load, the Elmendorf load, which is up to another 10 to 12, I think, megawatts on their side of the fence. So once we get that load, then we will kind of get the demand side will be there. And so now we've proposed, a business case. The easy one is just to fill in that last bay. That adds another 1.4 megawatts. It takes up another 400 CFM of gas. We right now have probably close to 800 to 1,000 today of gas that we could burn. But obviously we won't get there with that facility. The other option in our business case is to build this separate building over here where you see the two 2.7s and leave that bay empty. So one option is to sit there and fill in the existing unit, and that's it. That's a no-brainer on a business case. The other option then is to build a new building with a 2.7 in it, with the option to come back with another 2.7, and then we still have the room for the 1.4. And that option there, we will take care of the gas through the next 20 years, basically. That matches up with the requirements. That other 2.7 we're saying is 10 years out. You won't have
Mr.
gas.
Dyson had a question, if you're open for it. Didn't you have a hand up?
Mr. Dyson.
Dyson?
Fred?
you have a question?
Yeah, so you covered something in passing. I think you said there was a grant or something from the Obama administration. Was that a carbon capture kind of thing?
That was the investment tax credits. So, but it was directed towards green energy projects.
All right, and then just, I'm a gearhead. I'd enjoy seeing a schematic. I'm particularly interested in how you count the field, and count the stuff. And then I suspect there'll be like a layer cake over the generations here. Anyways.
Stop in sometime. We'd love to show you around.
Yeah, but anyways, I enjoyed that.
Is the building you're considering for the 2.7s, is that what the flare house, the area that they're currently flaring?
It's adjacent to our generation facility, which was in the lower left-hand corner.
Oh, okay.
So that's on Jaber
Yeah.
land.
Okay.
So that's roughly that. So those are two big, rough orders of magnitude. The 1.4 is a $4.5 million project. Okay. The other project over there is all in about a $30 million project. So it's a significant difference. The economics obviously favor the 1.4. Long term, the long term, but it doesn't take care of the available gas, right? So the long term option, which is the two 2.7s plus the 1.4, has slightly worse economics, especially in the short term, because we're building infrastructure that we're not going to actually need until 10 years from now. And so what we've done, and we've had this discussion with Mark and his team, is that to make those business cases even out, we've come back and said, and our consultant that put together this business case, his recommendation was if the muni drops the price of gas slightly and equates those economics, makes the cost benefits equal, this to that, then their recommendation is you should go with this because long-term that's in the best interest. Long-term that burns more of your gas, drives more revenues here to the municipality. So we've gotten favorable comments along that line that the community would be willing to look at that and negotiate that. And so that's what we have right now in front of the Air Force leadership. I just talked to the CE group out there yesterday about where we are in this process. We gave them that business case back in September. They're updating it because of the recent change in the tax laws. So that's gonna make it a little bit more beneficial. So they're gonna update it for those benefits. They're also getting wing commander support, and a letter from the wing commander. And they're telling me 6 to 8 weeks we'll have a decision. they're saying this probability is very, very high. At a minimum, we're going to go with the 1.4, which is, going to increase our production, our consumption of gas by about 400 CFM. But they're advocating for this, and because of cost benefits, we've equated those with this reduction in gas. They're pushing for this. So, but we're 6 to 8 weeks from a decision from the Army or Air Force.
And what about ordering the generator and installation and all that kind of stuff?
We can't do it, because of air permitting, we can't do anything until we have air permits in place. So we can't put concrete on the ground, we can't order generating units. So the first thing we will do, and which this is about a 2-year time frame, if we got a decision today, we have to get air permits in place.
In terms of purchasing the gas, is that via MLMP or is it via the city?
Go on Utilities buys the gas from the city.
From the city. So if we end up selling MLMP, it's a standalone contract. It's not tied to them at all. One way or another.
The gas is produced by solid waste.
Yeah, right. Okay, good. Other questions? Yes, Mr. Whittle.
I guess 2-1, would this impact our agreement with the Klugna?
I mean, the NAWA Act,
We had that lawsuit with them.
that one? The North Anchorage Land
Yeah, no,
Agreement.
I was looking for.
You were
Mr.
involved
Falls.
with that.
I was very involved with that. It's my understanding that the way that the settlement worked out was that it settled all conflicts associated with landfill gas. So no, it wouldn't affect that in any way.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So you're getting more methane than you expected, so we have this good problem.
Yeah, it's sometimes a good problem.
So,
Except when it's leaking.
Except when someone calls me.
so what, I mean, the stuff that makes the methane, what if we do a lot of recycling and you don't get as much, or what makes the methane, and can that, are there things that our habits as a city
Decaying
can
stuff.
change how much you produce?
Well, as I say, in the big picture, the total quantity is a fixed number. But what changes things are things like moisture input. One of the huge things that happened is, you may recall back in 2012, out at the landfill, we had 185 inches of snow that turned into water that I think we're still hauling it off. But moisture is a huge factor in the gas production. There's a lot of different things that you can do to kind of tweak how you get the gas in and and enhance the gas. But once it starts, you can't stop it. So it's once you get that cycle in motion, it's pretty much a self-sustaining reaction until it runs out of organic. We've got 9 million tons of organics out there.
Dean, would you take a look into North Anchorage Land Agreement Act with Klutna and make sure we're not subject to any additional fees going to them? Take a look into that settlement and just find out. I'd rather have a legal opinion than something on the fly here.
Yes, sir. I want to confirm with Ms. Controller's office.
If you would, please. And the other thing was Amy had a question. Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to just point out, I've been commenting on this for a little while now. For the last couple of months, literally the smell of the methane is overwhelming when you drive through from Eagle River to about the S curve. Yesterday, I was driving in and it literally made my stomach turn. It's bad. You guys, what are you actively doing besides bringing these online? What can you do to mitigate that until you're able to capture more of that gas?
The best thing, the only thing that we can do is just keep, increasing the amount of gas that we're pulling out of the landfill. I mean, that's it. And right now, we're running I think today the flare was running at about 1,000 CFM. We have another 1,000 CFM capacity in the flare. But one of the challenges is that you have to make sure when you're pulling it, the harder you pull it, the more you get to, the more critical some of the balancing gets, because if you pull too hard in certain areas, you can actually create landfill fires and things like that, and that would be far worse than where we're at right now.
Mr. Constant,
On that point,
is your name Constant? He was next in line. Go ahead.
I would say
Did you
go
have-
up. I mean,
All
I have a
right, go
question,
ahead,
but
Fred, go
Since
ahead.
you're there, and yours is germane, go ahead.
Yours isn't?
Well, it is, but it's separate from what was just being talked.
yeah, so landfill gassing off is a very natural process. But did the cap we have over the producing zone exacerbate the escape gas and the smell?
There is no cap on the landfill,
Keep it.
other than what we call an interim cap of about 24 inches of soil.
That's what I would call a cap.
Yeah.
I suspect it's clay rich.
No, it's
Okay,
just,
all right.
it's just the local gravel.
So
out there.
when you did that exacerbate the gassing off or localize it?
No, it really had nothing to do with it. Basically, all the cap does is keeps more air from coming in, and but the gas, the reaction that creates the gas is an anaerobic process, and so it just once that the bacteria that produce the methane run out of oxygen, they just take off and they start producing their own gas, their own heat. Middle of that landfill is 100 to 135 degrees.
Yeah, so without the covering layer, the 24 inches of soil, would the situation would still be the same?
Yes, but on the other side, we're required by federal law to have our landfill covered with at least a foot. No, actually, I take that back, because the area in interim, it would be 2 feet in most of those areas. So we're required to do that, whether it would help or not.
Respectfully, I'm skeptical that the 24 inches of soil doesn't alter it, but I'll bet you're right and I'm wrong.
I would actually rather have it tighter than what it is.
Okay.
But because
We're
we're
done.
also gonna put more trash on top of that, a lot of those areas, I don't wanna have a place that will stop things from, a barrier from things moving up and down, because down the road, that will be a very bad thing, because we do have moisture moving down as we have gas moving up.
You have settling of it as well.
We have lots of settling, yes.
Thanks, yeah. So I'm back to Ms. Demboski's concern, and I share it because I do spend quite a bit of time in Eagle River. Seems the Eagle Point neighborhood, and even across the bridge up as far as Jitters, and all the way to Walmart recently, it's been smelling pretty strongly of methane. And so I'm wondering if we have a monitoring program that reaches out into the neighborhood for kind of those kinds of discernible smells. Because I know, like at Merrill Field in the Fairview neighborhood, noise monitoring has been a request of the neighborhood forever. Just can't seem to get it there. But it seems like if we could have a map of where these smells are at certain times, specific conditions, we might be able to better analyze and fix problems.
We log all of the complaints that we get and try and track and figure out what's going on. And I know I personally take some drives around all the way up into those areas and all the way up to the South Eagle River ramp coming back, because my normal drive out there every day is from Anchorage out, and so a lot of days I'll just keep going all the way out and come back, or come back down through the Eagle River Loop Road, and just to see what's going on. And if I notice anything, we usually go out and start adjusting things in the landfill.
Well, Mr. Madden, can you go ahead and list mine as a complaint yesterday morning at 8:30?
Okay, I can do that.
You sure it wasn't your car, Amy?
Oh, no, I'm gonna start making a note every single time I drive by now, but that's a good tip, thank you.
You have anything else, Mr. Constant?
Yeah, I just think that, Amy, more than just complaints that are call related, it might be wise to start communicating to members of your councils to be more active in the management of that, because the problem will just continue until there's enough data to prove that there's a real problem. So,
Great point. Thank you.
Other questions? Other comments? Other presentation? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Croft.
So, we've discussed before, I've had meetings with solid waste about, the fact that the gas production likely affects the cost, the estimated cost of, closing down the landfill facility. And I just wanted to check back in and see, I thought from our last meeting, you were gonna, rework those numbers and see if there was, what the change was.
So this is Mark Spafford, Mr. Croft. We're still working on that.
Okay, but you are gonna get me something about revising them.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments? Mine is cost of closing out. Mr. Croft, are you talking about closing out the landfill?
Yeah,
That's a long way down the road, isn't it?
It is.
How far?
Right now, our last estimate was about 2050.
Okay.
We'd be finished.
2050 if you're around, Eric.
well, but we're putting it, the problem is we're putting in a certain amount of money every year for it, which is prudent, we should do that. But the question is, are we paying the
putting
right
in enough?
mortgage here?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that we accrue costs, and actually that is kind of the basis for the amount of money that we put into that fund, strictly based on what the cost is to physically close the landfill. And there are definite items that are prescribed as what is considered closure costs in that analysis. So basically, whether you can produce revenue outside of that, these are just the approval is strictly based on what it will take to physically close the landfill.
Well, let's be clear, because I thought we got this clear in the prior. I wanted an estimate, and still want an estimate, and I thought we had an agreement that you were gonna give me an estimate of what a real, true, closure cost would be, taking into account the fact that you are very likely to produce gas on it and not cost money, but make money. So if you're working on that, then that's great, but if you're saying you're not gonna include that in the cost, then that's a problem.
Like I said, this is Mark Spafford again, Mr. Croft. We're still working on that.
Okay.
That brings my question up in terms of what do we do with solid waste after that? After we close out?
Well, right now, we're
Is there
actually-
expansion for another?
We're actually just, we started about the beginning of November, working on a new master plan for solid waste for the future.
Yeah.
Basically, the two goals of that plan are to look at how we can best use the existing landfill, get more years out of it than what we're projecting right now, and also start looking at where do we go next.
Yes.
Is it an expansion next door onto the base? Is there some technology out there that we want to look at that will minimize how much stuff is going into the landfill? There's lots of consideration of various recycling and other diversion. So we're just starting into that process right now.
If we're 30 years out, that seems like a reasonable time to start thinking about it, but it takes a while to find another spot, to develop it, to, all that other stuff, so.
Absolutely. We have the map from 1985 of all of they did a great analysis of all of the potential places that are big enough to put a landfill in the entire municipality then. And you look at that map now, and most of those sites are
I know
gone.
it, yeah.
So,
Other questions, folks? Yes, Mr. Wilk?
I think, just following up on that a bit, I thought that we were putting the money aside not just to close the current one, but also to open a new one. That's not correct.
No, we have,
It's closure.
yeah.
That fund
It's a
that we
closure
were just
fund.
talking about is a closure fund.
Okay. Thanks.
Are we through?
Yep.
Yep. And again,
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it very much. It's good to hear that you're actually moving forward with some of the ideas we've chatted about way back when and thinking about it in terms of longevity and getting the most out of it. So thank you very much.
Next meeting starts at 2 o'clock. MLNP.